One of the most important tools that an editor has at their disposal is sound. Sound design in scenes is one of the ways that you can actually motivate things that are happening visually in your scene in ways that didn't necessarily make sense when you simply put two shots back to back. Now we're going to show you how sound design, especially in the case of this scene back here, is going to help bring the scene together and make all of the different visual elements come together in a way that makes perfect emotional sense and perfect story sense. Now, in the case of this example here, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start bringing in some sound to our sound effects layers down here to try to figure out what's going to work the best for our scenes. Now, if you noticed at the very beginning, this shot here is totally silent. There was no microphone hooked up to the camera, and we didn't have a sound person for this either. So what we have to do is we have to build in our own sound design. I'm going to find some audio that I grabbed for scene 6, and it's this ambience. Let me just drag this in here and listen to some of the different ambience options that we have. I have this rural countryside, and I can sort of listen to it here and see what we have. That's really good. There's lots of complexity and noise in here that I think is going to work really well for us. So it totally sounds like a farm out there. Let's go ahead and bring this into our stereo track. Now all I need is just enough to get me into the house. Once we're in the house and we have some of the natural audio, we can start to remove some of the ambient noises that we're bringing in just for the exterior. So I'll make this a little bit longer and give it plenty of room to fade out. Let's see how that works at the very beginning of our scene. Yep, it's pretty good right there. Now, something we could even do here that might be very interesting is to extend the length of this fade out just a little bit longer so that it goes a little bit further into the kitchen scene. But when we cut from the outside here to the inside here, we can actually lower the volume of the ambient noise as if it's much further away and quieter because we're now in the house. So I'm just going to make a hard cut right here and lower the volume of the interior ambience. Let's just go down to like -10. And we could try going a little bit further. A lot of sound design is about experimentation and listening over and over and over again and trusting your ears until it sounds just right. So your first guess may be completely incorrect and you may have to tweak it from there. Now I've also gone ahead and brought in some of the audio of the interior a little bit early. And so maybe I need to just crossfade all of that audio so it doesn't just have a hard start right here. I'm going to go ahead and add a crossfade between these 4 tracks of audio. And we'll take a listen to that.
I left a suit.
And that's great. But I think something that would actually be really helpful for this scene, which still feels just a little bit dead, is if we use just a little bit of music. Now, I'm going to grab one of the music tracks that I found from my music bin here. So I'm going to audition these and see which one might be good to begin with our movie. Now I'm looking not only for the music that I think sounds nice at the beginning, but what also might sound nice perhaps in the middle if I were to let it flow entirely over our scene. This is maybe just a little bit too light for the moment between Tom and his dad. Let's check out this one here, maybe at the bottom. Let's check out the middle of that. This feels like a nice, heavy, dramatic piece of music that might fit really well with the entire scene between Tom and his father. Let me go ahead and just drop it in down here. And I'm going to go ahead and listen to it with everything.
I left a suitcase out for you in your room. We talked about this. This is what's happening.
I don't understand.
Now, it's actually working really well for us, just letting it play out like this. However, it's too loud. So I don't want to lower the volume of the entire audio track. I just want to make some keyframes and lower the volume of the parts that are too loud once the dialogue begins. Now, depending on the software you're using, creating keyframes will be just a little bit different. But generally, most editing softwares have the ability to create keyframes easily. So I'm going to make a keyframe right when the dialogue begins happening, which is right about here. And I'll make another one just before that. And I'm going to lower the keyframe when the dialogue starts.
I left a suitcase out for you in your room. We talked about this. This is what's happening.
Now the song actually gets louder back here, so I'll make another set of keyframes just to lower the volume a little bit more when the song gets too loud. And I'll just do a gentle keyframe down here and lower it just a little bit more here.
We talked about this. This is what's happening.
I don't understand why they won't take Myra. It doesn't make sense.
I love that horse. As much as you do, but Myra?
Now we can let this run the entire scene, but I think that we're going to want to change the music up a little bit later on, because letting it drone all the way through the scene, just like we're hearing it is now, might be a little bit too much for this scene at the end when he runs outside, which should have a little bit of a lighter feel. So I think I'll just cut it right here and remove the end of it. And I can just go ahead and crossfade this out, just like that. Now, this piece of music has a lot of drones and tones in it, which is something that we talk about in a lot of detail in the art of music editing, and that's one of the reasons why I know that I can simply add a crossfade to the back of it to get out of it very smoothly at the end of my scene. Another important thing to notice is that as I'm bringing in my different sound effects and my different music tracks, I'm making sure to place them in the proper tracks of my timeline. So just like we discussed earlier in the course, this is a stereo sound effect, and I've made sure to put it in my stereo sound effects track. And down here is a piece of music. Music is typically stereo, and so I've placed it in my stereo music track. You can see up here, I have all of these mono tracks. This is my dialogue, which I've only placed in the dialogue track. And here we allowed some of the footsteps to continue, which are more or less sound effects, and so I've placed them in my mono sound effects track. Now, as I go to the beginning of this scene here, and I think about the way the music and the sound effects are playing, it feels like I just want a little something more to really tie this all together. It's as if the music starts a little bit too late, and the sound effects are just a little bit too bright. So let's go ahead and see if we have another music track that we can blend in with all of this that will help sort of bring all of these things together. I'm going to check out this one here, Supernova. I'm really loving the sort of sparse piano sounds. Let's hear the middle of it. Now this is a pretty cool track, but it's very wrong for our film. I really only like the beginning part of it here. Let me just bring in a little bit of the beginning and see if it blends really well with this Indigo Flight music track and some of the sound effects that we've brought in. I'm going to go ahead and just extend it a little bit, and then we'll add a crossfade to the back of it, just to make sure it doesn't drag on for too long, and we'll take a listen to that.
I left a suitcase out for you in your room. We talked about this. This is what's happening.
I don't understand why they won't take Myra. It doesn't make sense.
That's working really well for us. These two tracks blend together really nicely. The piano stabs of Supernova go together really well with the tones and drones of Indigo Flight. And I can get out of those piano stabs pretty nicely with a simple crossfade. So without doing too much music editing, I can very nicely compose a little bit of a new track that begins this scene, and that very first piano hit sort of motivates cutting into this shot here and having the sound effects carry us through all the way to the interior. Now, let's go ahead and skip through to the end of the kitchen. A lot of what we did here in the kitchen scene works really nicely. We're hearing all of the different movements and the chair noises as he leans forward, and there isn't a whole ton of sound effects work to be done unless you wanted to get really granular. So let's stop here and take a quick break. If you're following along as we go, this will give you a chance to catch up to where we are. At the end of this multi-part section, we'll be assigning your official homework. Feel free to edit up to where we are now, or continue into the next part and do all your editing at the end. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to continue bringing the two scenes to life with music and sound, part 2.